That call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday night, jolting me from the stack of quantum mechanics papers I'd been reviewing in my Columbia University office. The voice on the other end belonged to Dr. Stefan Yamamoto, someone I'd known for 12 years from the Gemini Observatory north in Hawaii, but I'd never heard him sound so shaken. Professor Kaku, I need to tell you something about 3I Atlas, but I can't discuss it over regular channels. They're monitoring everything now. I immediately sat forward, setting down my coffee. Stefan was methodical, cautious, the kind of astronomer who triple-checked observations before sharing them with anyone. If he was calling me at midnight with encrypted concerns, something extraordinary had happened. Stefan, what exactly are you seeing? The silence stretched for nearly 20 seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. 3I Atlas isn't traveling alone, Michio. We've confirmed at least 12 separate objects maintaining precise formation around the primary body. Perfect geometric spacing, coordinated movement patterns. This isn't natural fragmentation, this is organized. But let me tell you what NASA doesn't want you to know about these companion objects. Over the next hour, Stefan shared observational data that fundamentally challenged everything we thought we understood about interstellar visitors. Using the Gemini Observatory's advanced adaptive optics system, his team had detected multiple smaller objects traveling alongside 3I Atlas, each one following trajectories that maintained remarkable stability relative to the primary body. The spacing is too perfect, he explained, his voice carrying the weight of someone confronting impossible data. Natural debris fields don't behave this way. When comets fragment, the pieces drift apart chaotically, influenced by solar wind and gravitational perturbations. But these objects, they're maintaining formation like a fleet. Have you ever had a moment where a single piece of information completely reframes your understanding of a situation? That's exactly what happened as Stefan described what his team had observed through their telescopes. Michio, we've been tracking these companions for 3 weeks now. Each object is roughly 50 to 200 meters in diameter, and they're positioned at precisely calculated distances from 3I Atlas. It's not random, it's mathematical. But here's what made his discovery even more disturbing. The companion objects weren't just maintaining formation during 3I Atlas's journey through our solar system. They were executing coordinated maneuvers, small course corrections that kept them in perfect synchronization, adjustments that required active propulsion rather than passive orbital mechanics. Stefan, are you absolutely certain about what you're observing? Michio, I've been doing astronomy for 22 years. I know the difference between space debris and controlled flight. These objects are under active guidance. That conversation launched me into the most intensive investigation of my career. Because if Stefan's observations were accurate, we weren't just dealing with one anomalous visitor from interstellar space. We were potentially witnessing our first encounter with organized extraterrestrial technology. But the real shock came 3 days later. I was in my laboratory at Columbia running calculations on the formation dynamics Stefan had described when my secure phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was immediately familiar. Dr. Elena Vasquez from the European Southern Observatory in Chile. Professor Kaku, we need to talk immediately about the objects you've been investigating. Elena's team operates the Very Large Telescope, one of the most powerful astronomical instruments on Earth. She was calling about 3I Atlas. It meant the phenomenon had been independently confirmed by multiple observatories. Elena, what have you seen? More than 12 objects, Michio. We've identified 23 separate companions, and that's just what we can resolve with current imaging technology. The formation extends far beyond what smaller telescopes can detect. My hands went cold as I processed what she was telling me. Not 12 objects, 23 confirmed, possibly more. This wasn't a small debris field or a fragmented comet. This was beginning to look like a convoy. Elena, what can you tell me about their behavior? That's what's keeping me awake at night, Michio. Yesterday, we observed them execute a coordinated formation change. All 23 objects simultaneously adjusted their positions relative to 3I Atlas. The maneuver took exactly 47 minutes and resulted in a new geometric configuration. She paused and I could hear papers shuffling in the background. Michio, the precision was extraordinary. No natural process could coordinate that many objects across that distance with such accuracy. We're looking at evidence of organized intelligence. But Elena's revelation was just the beginning of a discovery that would challenge everything we thought we knew about our cosmic neighborhood. That night, I began reaching out to colleagues at observatories worldwide. What I learned over the following week painted a picture that was both fascinating and terrifying. Dr. James Park at the Subaru Telescope in Hawaii had independently detected similar formations, but had been instructed by his superiors to classify the observations pending further review. Dr. Anna Kowalski at the Nordic Optical Telescope reported nearly identical findings, but was told her data was under institutional analysis and couldn't be published. The pattern was unmistakable. Observatories around the globe were detecting the same phenomenon, but the information was being systematically suppressed. But here's where the story takes an even more extraordinary turn. 4 days after Elena's call, I received an unexpected visitor at my Columbia office. Agent David Morrison, from what he described as a multi-agency coordination team, arrived with credentials that granted him access to classified astronomical data. Dr. Kaku, we need your expertise in analyzing some observations that have significant national security implications. He opened a briefcase and pulled out high-resolution images that made Stefan's telescope data look like amateur photography. These were military-grade observations captured by surveillance satellites designed for tracking objects in deep space. And Professor, we've been monitoring 3I Atlas and its companions since they entered our outer solar system. What civilian astronomers have detected represents only a fraction of the actual formation. Agent Morrison activated a tablet displaying a three-dimensional map of the 3I Atlas formation. What I saw defied every assumption I'd made about the scale of this phenomenon. 47 objects, not 12, not 23, 47 separate entities traveling in a complex, multi-layered formation that extended across thousands of kilometers of space. Agent Morrison, how long have you been tracking this formation? Dr. Kaku, our deep space monitoring arrays detected the approach 18 months before civilian astronomers announced the discovery of 3I Atlas. We've been documenting their behavior, trying to understand their objectives and capabilities. He showed me tracking data that revealed something extraordinary. The companion objects weren't just following 3I Atlas, they were operating as an integrated system, with some objects serving as scouts, others maintaining communication relays, and still others positioned for what could only be described as defensive formations. Professor, based on our analysis, we believe 3E Atlas is the command vessel of an organized reconnaissance mission. The companion objects serve specific functions within a hierarchical structure that suggests advanced coordination and planning. But the most unsettling revelation was yet to come. Agent Morrison pulled out a final document that made my hands shake as I read it. Intelligence intercepts had detected structured electromagnetic emissions being exchanged between the formation members, not random radio noise, but deliberate communications using frequencies and protocols that suggested sophisticated technology. Dr. Kaku, these objects are talking to each other, coordinating their movements, sharing observational data, and reporting back to some kind of central command structure. The implications hit me like a physical blow. We weren't just observing a group of objects traveling together, we were witnessing active military-style operations conducted by intelligences that had mastered interstellar travel. Agent Morrison, what exactly are they observing? Us, Professor, every major population center on Earth, every military installation, every space-based asset. They're conducting a comprehensive survey of human civilization and our technological capabilities. That night, alone in my office, I tried to process the magnitude of what I'd learned. The hollow interior we discovered in 3I Atlas wasn't just an engineering curiosity. It was potentially a command center coordinating the activities of dozens of smaller vessels conducting systematic reconnaissance of our planet. But the story doesn't end there, because 3 weeks after Agent Morrison's visit, something happened that changed everything we thought we understood about these visitors. I was reviewing the latest observational data when my secure phone rang. This time the caller was Dr. Rebecca Chen from the Arecibo Observatory, though her voice sounded different, excited but also deeply troubled. Michio, something extraordinary happened last night. We were conducting routine radio observations of 3I Atlas when we detected something unprecedented. What kind of detection, Rebecca? Communication attempts, Michio, not just the electromagnetic emissions we've been tracking between the formation members, active attempts to establish contact with Earth-based radio telescopes. My blood went cold. Rebecca, are you saying they tried to communicate with us directly? At 23:47 GMT, we received a structured signal transmission directed specifically at our facility. Mathematical progressions, prime number sequences, and what appeared to be basic geometric proofs. It lasted exactly 12 minutes, then stopped. She paused, and I could hear the weight of what she was about to tell me. Michio, when the transmission ended, we responded with a simple mathematical acknowledgement, just to test if they were monitoring our frequencies. 37 minutes later, we received a response. They're listening to us, and they're ready to talk. But here's what terrified me most about Rebecca's revelation. The response hadn't just come from 3I Atlas. Radio telescopes around the world had simultaneously detected acknowledgement signals from multiple companion objects, each one transmitting on slightly different frequencies, but all containing the same basic message structure. It wasn't just one entity trying to communicate, Rebecca explained. The entire formation was participating in the attempt, like a distributed consciousness operating through multiple platforms. Over the following days, I learned that Rebecca's experience wasn't isolated. The Parkes Observatory in Australia, the Effelsberg Radio Telescope in Germany, and the FAST telescope in China had all received similar communication attempts, each one demonstrating increasing sophistication in the use of human mathematical and linguistic concepts. But the most shocking development came from an unexpected source. Dr. Maria Santos, a colleague at the SETI Institute, contacted me with information that fundamentally altered our understanding of these communication attempts. Michio, we've been analyzing the signal patterns from multiple telescopes, and we've discovered something extraordinary. The communications aren't random contact attempts, they're coordinated lessons. What do you mean, lessons? Each transmission builds upon the previous one, introducing increasingly complex concepts. They're teaching us their mathematical language, preparing us for more sophisticated communication. It's exactly the protocol SETI researchers have theorized for first contact scenarios. Maria showed me signal analysis that revealed a structured educational progression. Basic mathematics evolved into geometric principles, which progressed to physics concepts, which advanced to what appeared to be explanations of their propulsion technology. Michio, they're not just trying to say hello. They're trying to uplift our understanding to a level where meaningful communication becomes possible. But here's what keeps me awake at night. The educational progression wasn't just academic. Hidden within the mathematical lessons were star charts, showing the location of their origin point and mapping their journey to our solar system. The data revealed something that changed everything. 3I, Atlas, and its companions had traveled for over 4,000 years to reach us. This wasn't a random encounter or a chance discovery of our solar system. This was a deliberate, planned mission that had been in progress since before the rise of human civilization. Maria, what does a 4,000-year journey tell us about their intentions? Michio, you don't undertake a mission of that duration and complexity for simple exploration. They came here for a specific purpose, and they've been preparing for this contact for longer than written human history. But the most unsettling realization came when I analyzed the timing of their approach. The formation hadn't just arrived at our solar system randomly. Their trajectory and arrival time had been calculated to coincide with a specific phase of human technological development, the moment when we became capable of detecting and potentially communicating with interstellar visitors. They've been waiting for us to become ready, I told Maria during our final conversation about the discovery. Now, the question is, ready for what? Yesterday, I received one final communication that answered that question in ways I never expected. Dr. James McDonald, who'd been secretly coordinating international responses to the 3I Atlas phenomenon, called me with news that redefined everything. Michio, the formation is changing configuration again, but this time it's not a navigational adjustment. The companion objects are separating from 3E Atlas and establishing independent orbits around our solar system. My heart rate increased immediately. James, what does that mean? It means the reconnaissance phase is ending, Michio. They're transitioning to a permanent presence in our cosmic neighborhood. Some objects are positioning themselves at our Lagrange points. Others are establishing monitoring stations in the asteroid belt. The implications were staggering. This wasn't a brief visit followed by departure back to interstellar space. These visitors were preparing to stay. James, have they communicated their intentions? Yesterday, we received a transmission that was clearer than anything we've detected before. It came simultaneously from all 47 objects in the formation. He paused, and I could hear papers shuffling. The message was simple, Michio. 3 words in perfect English. Integration begins now. As I write this, sitting in my office as dawn breaks over New York City, I realize that everything we've experienced over the past months, the hollow discovery, the formation detection, the communication attempts, has been preparation for this moment. We are no longer alone in our solar system. The reconnaissance mission is complete, and the integration phase has begun. But integration into what? And what does it mean for humanity's future as an independent species? Those are the questions that will define our next chapter as a civilization. Because whether we're ready or not, 3I Atlas and its 47 companions are here to stay. The age of cosmic isolation has ended, and everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe is about to change forever. But tonight, as I look up at the stars through my office window, I can see new lights moving against the darkness, no longer visitors passing through, but permanent residents taking up positions in the cosmic neighborhood we once thought belonged only to us. The question isn't whether we're being watched anymore. The question is whether we're ready to be neighbors with intelligences that have mastered technologies we can barely comprehend. And very soon we're going to find out what kind of neighbors they intend to be. Tomorrow I'm scheduled to participate in humanity's first formal diplomatic contact with the 3I Atlas formation. Whether that conversation leads to peaceful coexistence or something else entirely remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, the universe has just become a much more crowded place, and we're about to learn whether there's room for all of us. But there's something else I haven't told you yet. Something that happened just this morning that changes everything we thought we understood about these visitors and their true intentions. At 6:23 a.m., I received an encrypted message on the secure channel that Agent Morrison had provided me weeks earlier. The sender was identified only as Formation Alpha, a designation I'd never seen before. The message was brief but revolutionary. Dr. Kaku, direct interface protocols have been established. Individual consciousness bridging will commence at coordinates we are transmitting to your personal device. Voluntary participation will determine integration pathway for your species. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. They weren't just asking for diplomatic contact anymore. They were requesting direct neural interface. The implication sent chills down my spine. But the message continued. Your quantum signature has been analyzed during observation period. You have been selected as primary human interface candidate based on consciousness compatibility matrices. Time remaining for voluntary compliance, 18 hours, 32 minutes. 18 hours. They had given me less than a day to decide whether to participate in what could only be described as the most significant moment in human history. I immediately called Agent Morrison. He answered before the first ring finished. Dr. Kaku, we've been monitoring the transmission. This isn't a request we can decline. What do you mean? Satellite tracking shows the formation is repositioning for optimal communication geometry. They're not just hoping we'll cooperate. They're preparing for contact, whether we agree or not. Over the next hour, Morrison briefed me on developments that had been classified at the highest levels. The 47 companion objects hadn't just established monitoring positions, they had been constructing something in space, a massive structure assembled from materials they'd somehow manufactured during their approach to our solar system. Dr. Kaku, we believe they've built a consciousness interface array. The technology appears designed to facilitate direct mind-to-mind communication across the barrier between human and non-human intelligence. The scope of their preparation was staggering. While we'd been debating whether they were natural or artificial, they'd been building infrastructure for permanent contact. Agent Morrison, what happens if I refuse to participate? Based on their communication patterns and behavioral analysis, we believe refusal would trigger alternative contact protocols that might not require human consent. That afternoon, I met with a joint committee of world leaders, scientists, and military officials in an emergency session convened specifically to address the 3I Atlas ultimatum. The meeting took place in a secure facility beneath the United Nations building in New York. Secretary General Maria Chen opened the session with a statement that redefined our situation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer discussing whether to make contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. We are discussing how to manage contact that is proceeding with or without our agreement. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, head of NASA's Astrobiology Division, presented analysis that shocked the room. Based on their construction activities and positioning maneuvers, the 3I Atlas formation is establishing permanent infrastructure for ongoing interaction with Earth. This isn't first contact. This is the beginning of integration, whether we consent or not. But the most disturbing revelation came from General Patricia Hayes, commander of the newly formed Joint Extraterrestrial Response Command. The formation has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our defensive technologies by several orders of magnitude. Their companion objects have neutralized 3 separate test missiles fired during defensive readiness exercises. Not destroyed, neutralized. The missiles simply stopped functioning and were returned to their launch sites undamaged. She paused, letting the implications sink in. They're not threatening us, but they're making it clear that resistance is futile. Cooperation appears to be our only viable option. The debate that followed revealed deep divisions within the global leadership community. Some argued for immediate military response, others for diplomatic negotiation, still others for complete compliance with whatever the formation demanded. But Dr. Sarah Kim, a consciousness researcher from MIT, provided the perspective that ultimately shaped our decision. Based on the communication patterns we've analyzed, the 3I Atlas Collective operates using principles of shared consciousness that humans don't naturally possess. They're not trying to conquer us, they're trying to upgrade us. The question is whether we trust them enough to allow that upgrade to proceed. As the meeting concluded, I realized that the choice wasn't really mine to make. The formation had selected me as their primary interface candidate, but the decision affected all of humanity. That evening, I returned to my apartment and found a package waiting outside my door. No delivery markings, no sender information, just a small metallic case that hummed with barely audible energy. Inside was a device unlike anything I'd ever seen. Crystalline components arranged in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and reconfigure as I watched. Attached was a note written in perfect handwriting. Dr. Kaku, This interface device will facilitate consciousness bridging during tomorrow's contact session. Neural integration will be gradual and reversible. Your cooperation will demonstrate human readiness for expanded awareness. I spent the night researching everything I could find about consciousness transfer technology, neural interface protocols, and the theoretical possibilities of mind-to-mind communication. But no amount of preparation could address my fundamental concern. What would happen to my human consciousness during this interface? At 3 a.m., I received one final message from the formation. Dr. Kaku, fear is understandable. Integration preserves individual identity while enabling expanded awareness. You will remain yourself, enhanced rather than altered. Tomorrow's session will prove our intentions are collaborative, not conquering. That reassurance coming from intelligences that had traveled 4,000 years to reach us carried weight that no human authority could match. This morning, as I prepare for what might be the most important conversation in human history, I find myself thinking about the journey that brought us to this moment. From Stefan's midnight phone call about companion objects to tomorrow's consciousness bridging session, it's been a progression towards something that was always inevitable. We are not alone, we never have been. And now, whether we're ready or not, we're about to join a community of intelligence that spans the galaxy. In 6 hours, I'll place the interface device they provided and attempt direct communication with minds that have mastered technologies we can barely imagine. What I learned during that session will determine not just my own future, but the future of our entire species. The age of human isolation ends today. The age of galactic citizenship begins. But as I look out my window at the morning sky, I can see them now. Tiny points of light moving in formation, no longer mysterious visitors, but confirmed neighbors, preparing to welcome us into something larger than we've ever imagined. The question isn't whether we're ready. The question is whether we're brave enough to take the next step in human evolution. And in 6 hours, I'm going to find out.